This is the TRU Leader Podcast. Today, our special guest is best-selling author Elaine Lin Hering. We talk about her new book, Unlearning Silence, and it's packed full of strategies on how to speak up and how to live more fully, so don't miss it.
Welcome to the TRU Leader Podcast. I'm Dr. Tracy Christofferson.
And I'm Michelle Trosett.
We are life and business besties, leadership coaches and mentors, and polarity intelligence experts. We're the authors of Polarity Intelligence, The Missing Logic in Leadership, and co-founders of Missing Logic.
We are here to help high-achieving leaders break through leadership norms that cause them suffering at work and home. If you're looking to elevate your leadership, increasing your productivity, effectiveness, and impact, and manage your health and well-being, spend quality time with those you love, and live your best life, then you are in the right place.
Our goal in this podcast is to equip you with new ways of thinking and practical and tactical strategies for succeeding at work and thriving in life. Think of this podcast as your weekly dose of personal and professional development so you can reach your full leadership potential, create a life you love, and be what we are calling a thriving, resilient, and unstoppable or true leader.
If you are ready to learn and laugh a little, let's get started.
Welcome, everybody, to the TRU Leader Podcast. We've had a wonderful interview today.
Wonderful interview.
Yeah, amazing. A lot to unpack.
Yeah, we're going to have her back. We already decided.
Oh, yes. Elaine wrote an incredible book, and there's so much in it. It's so thought-provoking, inspirational.
Yeah, and it really grabs you personally, makes you really think about your own self, how you are, how you became the way you are, and then how you are as a leader out there in the world. So I just found when I was reading the book and listening to the book, to your point, Tracy, there's just a lot there.
Yeah, and we just really had a great dialogue with Elaine about just, what's in her book, but also just how it aligns with the different things that we have learned and the work that we've been doing around meaningful dialogue and polarities. And, there's just a whole bunch of polarities there, But it was uplifting and thought-provoking and all of that, right?
Yeah.
So I can't wait for you to listen to it.
Yes.
Or watch it. Wherever you are.
Yeah. So let me tell you about our guest. Her name is Elaine Lin Hering, and she is a speaker, facilitator, and former lecturer at law at Harvard Law School. She works with organizations and individuals to build skills in communication, collaboration, and conflict management. She's worked on 6 continents and facilitated executive education at Harvard, Dartmouth, Tufts, UC Berkeley, and UCLA. She has served as the Advanced Training Director at the Harvard Mediation Program, and a Managing Partner for a global leadership development firm. She has worked with coal miners at BHP Billiton, microfinance organizers in East Africa, mental health professionals in China, and senior leadership at the U.S. Department of Commerce. Her clients include American Express, Chevron, Google, Nike, Novartis, PayPal, Pixar, and the Red Cross. She is the author of the USA Today best-selling book, Unlearning Silence, How to Speak Your Mind, Unleash Talent, and Live More Fully. And you're going to learn a lot more about that in this interview. So here is our interview with Elaine. Well, welcome, Elaine, to the TRU Leader Podcast. We've been waiting for this day, and it's finally arrived.
I'm so thrilled to be here.
Oh, we're really excited to talk to you.
We are. I feel like we're friends already. Listening to your book on audiobooks, I had to do 8 hours in my ear.
We are bonded for life.
Oh, there you go.
We are. And speaking of your book, just major congratulations. Elaine's book is called Unlearning Silence, How to Speak Your Mind, unleash talent, and live more fully. And it is just excellent. We both loved it so much. And we're so grateful that you broke your silence and wrote it. Yeah. So can you tell our listeners, why it's so important that, silence is something that we have to quote unquote unlearn?
Yeah, this book is really both personal and professional. And when I'm talking about silence, I'm not talking about the meditative pause that we probably all could use more of. I'm talking about the ways that we might feel like we need to edit ourselves, bite our tongue in order to keep the peace and not rock the boat. And that silencing of our own needs, our own thoughts, is incredibly damaging. And we can get into the reasons why, but both from a sense of self, do I know who I am? Do I believe the value that I inherently have as a human being, to social isolation and loneliness, thinking that I'm the only one? One of the big reasons I wanted to write the book is because there's so much conversation in workplaces, in the community, use your voice, say what you think. And that just do it approach doesn't acknowledge the reality that it is not safe, does not make sense for many of us to be able to do just that, to speak our mind. And when we don't, it is turned into a message of, well, you woman, you need to just have more confidence, have more courage. Essentially, if you could fix yourself, then we could promote you, then we might hear you, then we could be in right relationship. And that just seemed like the wrong question, right? Instead of go fix yourself, have more courage, be more assertive, why are we not talking about the ways that we've learned and been rewarded for staying silent, right? If in class you didn't ask the question, you didn't talk back, you were the good student, not because you were learning math or science, but because you were well behaved according to someone's standard. And we didn't just make it up, start staying silent for any reason. It's all the different factors around us that reward us for staying silent, because that is proper, because that is professional. So I at least wanted us to ask a more honest question, which is, what role is silence playing in your life and in your leadership? To really think about, are we living as intentionally as we want and having the impact that so many of us as leaders want to have, which is, how do I grow my team, unleash their talent, do good work together? Because as someone who's been in leadership development for more than a decade, and we both have stories like this, we talk to so many well-intentioned leaders who say things like, my team's not telling me anything. Or I find out way after the fact that they knew something was off. Why aren't they saying things to me? And then we do the diagnostic calls with their direct reports who say, I would never say anything. Do you know what happened to that person who actually said something? They're not here anymore. And so how do we close that gap, especially for well-intentioned leaders who want to lead well, and close that gap for ourselves so that if we have one life to live, we're living it as we intend?
Yeah, that's so profound. Tracy and I do a lot of work with leaders and leadership norms, and how we've been indoctrinated into leadership norms. And I think what your book really does so well, not even from a leadership perspective, but just from a human perspective, is we've been indoctrinated with norms around being silent, not bringing our voice. And you just did a great job bringing that to light, I think.
Yeah, it is really a human dynamic.
Yeah.
And how do we be human well?
Right.
And get to be human rather than robots.
Yeah. Well,
Right,
and
to
we
be-
get shaped. We get shaped early on, and that comes out in your book as well, right? And we're indoctrinated with these different beliefs and these different behaviors, and we don't even know that we're doing that we're living by these norms, so to speak, right? Or by these ways of being indoctrinated. And I think what I really appreciated is, we have been doing a lot of work around polarity intelligence, and your book really resonated with us because we love the topic of silence. And what came up for me is we learned early on, right, to create space for voices, for advocacy, all of those kind of components, because we weren't living that, right? And to create a space that was safe. And we swung way to the extreme with silence, right? To really embrace silence and to be silent so you can hear the voices, which is equally important, right? But it's also about being silent in the right context, in the right way, in a way that's healthy and meaningful. And that's what was coming up for me. It's like the contrast, right? Of don't be silent and be silent, because there's a place for both.
There is absolutely a place for both. That's why chapter 3 is when silence makes sense. And for listeners, to be really clear, unlearning silence does not mean saying everything everywhere all the time to everyone. The world is far too noisy for that. And that's so much energy for us to fight every battle. And the difference between silence that is additive or strategic and the silence that can be deeply damaging is agency. Do you even know when and where silence is showing up in your life? And is it the generative silence, right, that leads to reflective thinking or slow thinking? Or is it the silence that means that you're not accepted and that you have to tamp down or ignore your own needs? Or are you doing that to someone else? Those are the questions I hope we're asking of ourselves.
Yeah. And in our work, meaningful dialogue is one of the principles of polarity intelligence. And it's I think it kind of goes back to your point too about intention and what is our intention. And in meaningful dialogue, it is about silence and reflection so that you can really contemplate what you are hearing and really hearing the voice of somebody else and giving them the space to advocate, to speak their voice and why they believe what they believe or why they think what they think or what experiences they have had. And to have that deeper, meaningful learning together collectively around our variances and our experiences and our perspectives. And I just think, it's that both and of unlearning the silence and learning the silence. And so where in other ways have you found this to be really helpful? Like, to explore the concept of silence in conversation with others. What are other things that you would bring forth to the listeners?
Yeah, I think what you shared about meaningful dialogue is so key. And it is both those words, dialogue, multiple directions, and meaningful. And I would imagine that means full of meaning, which also says it's not just logical. It could also be our emotions. It could be our intuition, rather than these narrow definitions of information or data that we might hold, that it's got to be quantitative data. Qualitative data isn't even enough. In what ways are we actually silencing different perspectives because of the requirements that we implicitly hold about what is valued, what is important? And are we even noticing what we prioritize on our teams, in our organizations? Because so often all of that is invisible. It's just the way that it's been done. And the way that it's been done often is a really powerful or influential leader or longevity. And I talk with so many teams who are like, we don't really know why we had that meeting, other than we inherited the format down the line. And we all know that that meeting could have been an email exists for a reason. So can we be intentional about our time, our bandwidth, our interactions to get to that meaningful dialogue? And the meaningful dialogue, not just for dialogue's sake, but because fundamentally it is honoring our humanity. Honoring someone else's perspective, where they come from, what they see that we might not see. It is also the opportunity for us to learn. Right? More information, different perspectives, that leaders cannot make sound decisions if they don't have that information.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
it's really tapping the wisdom in everyone. And one of the major assumptions about dialogue is everyone has a wisdom, you don't.
Yep.
And so it's just creating that space. And sometimes we really stress the silence. You can be in communication, in dialogue with each other without saying a word. And that's really powerful. And it's important we do share our thoughts, share our questions we might have at the same time.
Well, and I think it's dialogue with others, but dialogue with self as well, right? And that's what, really struck me in your book too, was it's like really listening to self and to how you're silencing yourself, right? And why that's happening and what are your, the influencing factors. So it's as much about exploring for yourself and for others, right? How you're silencing somebody else, but how you're silencing yourself. Again, that both and of how we sit in both seats, right? And what you can learn.
Let me be really concrete with an example to the extent that that helps listeners figure out what we're talking about even more. My son is 6 years old, and I grew up in a patriarchic culture. If a man says something, you should listen. That's how you respect them. This is just the way the world works. And so he at 6 will say something like, I don't want noodles for dinner. And I'm like, okay, let me figure out how to accommodate that. And then I stop and I think, hold on, who's the parent here? Who's actually making this meal? Do I have agency? Going back to that piece that we talked about, do I have agency to choose a different way just because someone says something, he says something, do I have to listen? And it's maybe the more extreme example because there's a parent-child dynamic there. There's a person doing the cooking and person not doing the cooking dynamic. But how often does that happen in a workplace, right? Where my manager 2 jobs ago said this thing. And so now, or shot me a look in a meeting. And so now I have this unspoken rule in my head of, oh, we don't say things around here. But this here isn't that there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's this unconscious habit that forms. And that's and let's also acknowledge that your current manager may be similar to your former manager. I don't want to discount that reality. But there's a consciousness to it of in what ways have I learned a habit or an instinct? Does it serve me in the context and relationship that I'm in right now? How do I want to respond here rather than move through on autopilot of, oh, I guess I'm not making noodles tonight, or I guess I can't say anything in this meeting because that's not what is expected of someone in my role, right? What are those embedded assumptions that may or may not be accurate? And they may be accurate and great. You've got that wisdom there. But if it's not, to me, it's worth that clarification, worth that interrogation, particularly if we want to be heard and known and be able to offer our wisdom and perspective.
Yeah. Yeah. But it does start in your home. Right? It's there as well. So I really appreciate you bringing that forth, like who and how we are with our children. I mean, I was with my grandchildren this weekend, and I said to my husband, and I said to them, wow, like if I would have said some of the things that you're saying to me, to my parents, I wouldn't be here today. But I don't, and they're always respectful, but they're just very open with with what they say and what they feel, and they express themselves very, and I'm just mindful. I don't want to dampen that, and it's again, teaching them respect, and there's a place and a time for different things. Right. But, but I was just thinking about that this weekend. I thought, wow, like how things have changed, but not in a bad way. It's just the evolution, and to help them be able to feel that they can bring themselves forward and express themselves and their desires and their needs. And it's just, because if you clamp it down there, right, it can be the beginning of what happens as they move out into the world. So I think
absolutely. And let's also acknowledge that that's uncomfortable. or surprising for the different stakeholders around us.
Yeah, exactly.
Because if we are used to a children should be seen and not heard model, then it is surprising to both see and hear them very loudly sometimes. And it also means that we are needing to readjust in both mindset and action, which if we are just operating based on our habits, it's deeply uncomfortable. I don't want to underestimate what is required to create or reward or nurture voice. I'm inclined to believe that it's worth it for the reasons that you're suggesting, right? If we want to raise our children, if we ourselves want to be able to honor our needs, goals, hopes, and concerns, and influence the world in the direction that we would like to see it go, that is going to take adjustment and sometimes discomfort or even just surprise from any of us. And if we're in that dialogue, though, of why, and that reasoning is transparent, that can help the change rather than, oh my God, what just did that really come out of your mouth? Which is often my reaction.
Am I hearing this? Yeah, for sure. Well, and I think the other thing here is we are all human beings.
Yeah.
Right? So we're all unlearning and learning, right?
Yes.
And I think we have to give ourselves grace and give each other grace and kind of, move towards this shared purpose and intention for healthy connections and communication and, just being respectful and all the, those human elements and just continuing to bring it forth, but recognize we're all on our own journey around this and we've all had different experiences, right?
Every one of us. Yep. Yeah.
Hey, we want to pause here for just a minute because we're so excited to tell you registration is open for our new free webinar. It's called Stress to Success, the formula for leaders to excel professionally and personally. If you're a leader, small business owner, or entrepreneur, and you're experiencing any of these, you struggle to reconnect or reignite the passion you once felt for your career, your personal life doesn't get the attention it deserves because of the demands of your work life, or the conflict between your professional life and personal life is growing more intense each day, and or maybe you're leaving work almost every day less and less satisfied with your performance, then you might be making one or more of these mistakes. Sacrificing your personal life to focus on work challenges or projects every week, staying late at work most days or making yourself accessible 24/7, answering texts and emails and phone calls, maybe saying yes to requests to take on more responsibility or projects when you prefer to say no, or spending increasing amounts of time doing things that do not bring you joy or drain your energy, or maybe telling yourself every week, when things slow down at work, it will get better and I'll have a life. Truth is, if you keep making these mistakes, you'll keep getting the same results. When what you really want is to excel in your professional life and career, meaning you want to be highly productive, well-regarded, and respected by your team and peers, and have a positive impact and influence in your work. And at the same time, you want to be living a fulfilling, thriving life, meaning you want to spend quality time with family and friends and maintain your health and well-being, experience joy, and prioritize your personal life. But you don't know where to start or how to get off the hamster wheel you're on. The only way to excel professionally while thriving personally is to be a thriving, resilient, unstoppable, or true leader. In the webinar, Stress to Success, the formula for leaders to excel professionally and personally, we reveal the formula that we've used and leaders around the country we've mentored have used to excel in their professional lives and career while living a fulfilling, thriving personal life. Click the link in the show notes to learn more and register today so you can start living your best life as a true leader.
We have to ask you, our Our next question is about the action part of your book, Elaine. We love the way that you organized your book too, and you give good strategy and method of how to speak up, including the toilet gate story. We got to bring up the toilet gate story. So we thought we just would pause here and let you tell our listeners that story first.
I'm trying to mask the sensory input that comes up as I think about toilet gate. Toilet gate, as we have fondly termed it, is an experience that my husband and I had early on in our marriage when we first moved in together. You know, there's always conversations about household work. And I had just come back from a business trip. It was the weekend. I was thinking, all right, what's our list, laundry list and otherwise, of things that we need to do? And so I said to him, hey, we should really clean the toilet this weekend. To which he said, I did. And I bit my tongue in that moment, mostly because I was befuddled. To me, cleaning the toilet means that there are no longer streaks or dust residue on the outside and the inside of the toilet. And so for someone that I had just chosen to spend my life with and made pledges for better or worse, to be claiming that they had cleaned the toilet and yet the evidence was still there, I was confused, frustrated, didn't know what to say, concerned, maybe. And I was earlier in my journey of learning to use my voice. So I think I just probably nodded and said, and then went and cleaned the outside of the bowl. As we unpacked this story later on, he said, oh, I just cleaned the part of the toilet that we use, which is the inside. And so it was an opportunity for us to get aligned on a definition of what a clean toilet is. And it was such a good example to me of how often we have such a clear assumption of what something should look like or be. And it feels almost demeaning to have to explain it. Like, to me, how else could you define a clean toilet? Apparently there are other definitions, and we've since aligned on one. But that reality of being human and being different human beings is that we can't actually read each other's minds.
Right.
And so sometimes needing to parse out, what does this mean to you? Or when you say logic or concern, what do you mean? Or even, you've been silent during this meeting. What did that silence mean? Needing to unpack our thinking, because if we stop back and think about it, we're different human beings. We have different experiences. We grew up in different families. We have lived different lives. So of course it makes sense that we would see things differently. And when we are moving quickly, we make the assumption everyone thinks like us. So that leads us to different ways to speak up. And so often I am asked to just give people the words, like, give me the words to inject my thought in this meeting. If you're looking for an entryway to inject your thought in a meeting, I see it differently. Or even just, hold on, let's pause. I'd like to revisit, right? Those are all great catchphrases to get you started. But there's actually deeper work, and I call them the 4 anchors, because our conversations are not linear. They're not structured. They don't follow a script typically. Or even if I have a script in my head, somehow the other people that are party to this conversation aren't following the same script. But the 4 anchors for speaking up are start with why. Meaning, do you know why you actually want to speak up? What's the bigger why? This is Keegan and Leahy's work at the Harvard Kennedy School. Is it because you care about justice? Is it because you want to redefine leadership on this team? Is it because you care about the world that you're leaving for your kids or your grandkids? What's the bigger why that would make it worth it for you to stir up the discomfort, to experience some of it for yourself, to change or to challenge? What's that bigger why? It gives you something to hold on to when the waves start moving around you. Second is connect those dots. And that's the toilet gate story of how do you see it? That's different than how I see it. Let's parse that out, and we might actually learn something about it. That is Arjus's work around the ladder of inference. The third anchor is make the ask clear. So many of us want to show up for each other, want to help, want to support, but frankly, we don't actually know what is helpful. And what I think might be helpful in the moment may not actually be what you're looking for. This is also the work around love languages of everyone experiencing things in different ways. So can I actually, as I'm speaking up, make clear what I'm looking for? Hey, Michelle, what would be most helpful today is if you can just listen. Like, I just need to get this off my chest. We'll problem solve tomorrow, but you problem solving today is going to make me feel unheard. And having that conversation really helps us show up for each other. The fourth anchor I offer is embrace resistance, which is maybe the least popular because many of us, when we speak up, we just wish people would listen and do what we say right away, preferably yesterday. And so why are we spending time debating, disagreeing? Why aren't you on board right away? But embrace resistance acknowledges the reality that we're going to see things differently. And actually, resistance is some form of engagement. It's not necessarily the engagement we would hope for right off the bat. But if they're expressing concerns, they have pushback, they're at least thinking about it and in a rigorous way. And so embracing resistance is let's acknowledge that reality that not everybody's going to get on board right away. And also, if I'm honest with myself, if you have pushback, if you see problems with this idea, I want to know now, not 2 months or 2 years from now. So embracing resistance means let me mine that interaction for information that could help make the idea better, make the step a more productive one. And those four anchors mean that as things get messy and are nonlinear, we have things to hang on to, right? I remember why I'm doing this in the first place. I can try to connect the dots to make sure I'm tracking and see where we see things differently. I can make the ask clear so that I increase the likelihood you can respond to me in a productive way. And also not being afraid of, but rather embracing and using resistance gets us a lot further in speaking up and getting heard and making progress forward together.
Yeah, I think those are just really, it's a great model to follow when you're trying to bring a different perspective. And it helps you get centered first yourself on what you're trying to communicate. So that's very helpful. And certainly, Tracy and I could relate to the embracing resistance because often if a polarity is involved, there's going to be resistance. But it doesn't mean one person's right, one person's wrong. It's really recognizing they're bringing a perspective that might be needed for whatever our shared purpose is. And that you can just let that sink in and listen to what that resistance is.
Well, there's usually wisdom there someplace, right? They've had a different experience, right? Or they see something in a way that you're not seeing it. And it may end up being nothing, but it can be, it can be that one person who says, wait a minute, right? That just brings a perspective to a team, or to, a dyad, that it's like, oh, wow. Like that's the reason why we should or shouldn't, right? Like go down this path, or it can bring great insight. So we learn to just, on one hand, really embrace resistance. And then when you're in your personal journey, it's like, let go of resistance, let go of resistance. So it's like the both and of, right? You want to embrace it, but at a personal level, at some points, you just want to kind of let go of some of the resistance because it's based on old stuff, right? Stuff that's not serving you. So again, we're in
the polarity.
Exactly. There are so many polarities in this conversation, Elaine.
Totally.
Yeah. But it just shows the complexity of being human.
It is the
and
complexity
engaging.
of being human and engaging. And what is the alternative?
Yeah.
The alternative is living in our own silos,
Yeah.
further isolated from one another, telling stories about each other that probably aren't true.
Yeah.
The Surgeon General and others have done tremendous work around loneliness and social isolation, having health impacts along the lines and comparable to cancer or diabetes over time. Cardiovascular health goes down. And certainly from a mental health perspective, right? Us internalizing those messages of it's just me or I'm the problem versus what perspectives might we each have that lead us to a collective data set, if I want to be really technical about it. And then we can sort through that together.
Yeah. So true. So true. Well, at the conclusion of the book, you share the opportunity to use our voices to build families and community and the world that we really want. So what do you see as the greatest opportunity there?
Yeah. The book was really written for two audiences. One is for people who have been silenced, and the other for well-intentioned leaders who want to support the people around them. And because of polarity, because we're human, we can often be one and the same, right? In one relationship, we are silenced. In another, we might be silencing others, potentially even in the same day, same moment. So to me, the opportunity for each of us is to acknowledge the wisdom, the gifts, skills, talents that we each have, the value that we each have inherently, not because of what we can do, but because we are human, and to honor that. So unlearning silence is the recognition of who are you? What do you bring? Can you, and this sounds very hashtaggy, live your best life, live in alignment with who you are. And there's beauty in that. And the opportunity to create spaces of belonging for each other, to honor the dignity in each other. There are flow-on effects in terms of bottom line and revenue generation and avoiding groupthink. But if I think about the human aspect of it, it is really how can I see you in your humanity where you are and honor that, and in turn create a culture where we all get to be that broken, beautiful work in progress, living well together. That's the opportunity.
Yeah. It kind of reminds me of the David, right? Like the David was created by chipping away different aspects until it showed, until it was there, right? Like, and what a beautiful piece of art, right? And we're all this beautiful piece of art. Just chipping away at the things that don't serve us and who we want to be and how we want to show up in the world. And
that chipping is painful.
Yes. Yeah. It hurts so bad.
Doing it to us and not when I want it to happen. Not right now. Maybe tomorrow.
That's right. Exactly.
Can you hold on that, please? Yeah.
But it gets us there.
Oh, well. And it just is what we're here to be. Right?
Yeah.
We're here to live into who we are meant to be fully. And we've just gotten covered up with a bunch of stuff, right? That we just need to kind of let go of. So,
Absolutely. Yeah. And not be stuck.
Yeah, exactly.
Always evolving.
Always. Forever.
Well, Elaine, gosh, it's time for the true questions now.
Okay.
So I'm going to ask the first one, and Tracy's going to ask you the second one. And for our listeners, she has no idea what's coming at her.
I'm doing a drum roll right now. Yes.
Okay, so curious minds want to know, of the 6 continents that you have worked, if you could pack your bags and take your family with you to live in one of those places, which one would it be and why would you pick it?
To live, not just to visit.
To live.
I would probably go back to Australia.
Ooh,
Australia, New
nice.
Zealand. Just nature is stunningly beautiful. And as someone who spent time on the East Coast of the United States, and this was still in my law firm legal days, I found such a healthier balance between work and life and enjoyment of life rather than what is my next billable hour. So I'd love for my family to get to experience that as well.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Love Australia. Wonderful.
All right, question number 2. Now this will be hard, but take your time.
Okay.
What's the best thing about being a mom?
The hugs. The hugs and the snuggles. That's probably the immediate response. And now if I take your coaching and I actually take the time, I might actually still come back to the hugs. There is something about the genuine connection there that is even unspoken, and that the hugs are a sign of affirmation and affirming who you are and holding you and trying to protect you a little bit from the world, but also reconnection and repair for when we don't get it right.
Yeah.
So there's a lot that is communicated even without words.
Yep.
And it helps that it's his love language too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and as a mother of 3 adult boys now, that never goes away. There's nothing like big boy hugs too.
The way to become a
something
grandparent.
about our humanity.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Nothing like it. That's wonderful. Ah, what a great time we've had. I hate to have it end. We're going to have you back. That's all there is to it.
I would be honored, and I am sending you virtual hugs.
Oh,
from California.
Yes to you. Yeah. Well, it's been just wonderful. Thank you so much. Your book and you are just jam-packed full of wisdom, and it's just really refreshing. It's like shining a flashlight in the dark corners, and I just really appreciate what you're bringing to light for so many individuals and leaders alike. And so thank you so much. And is there any closing remarks that you'd like to say before we wrap things up?
I'd love to stay connected with anyone for whom this message resonates. Obviously, the book is out in the world. As Michelle mentioned, the audiobook is narrated in my own voice. So take that with the warning that it comes with, or the invitation. And I'm Elaine Lin Hering on social media. So if I can be part of anyone's team going forward, continuing to shine light into dark places, I would be honored. Thanks for having me.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you.
So welcome. And for our listeners, thank you for being here and witnessing this incredible conversation today. We appreciate you every day, all the time. And, if you haven't yet subscribed to our podcast so you don't miss any of these incredible episodes that we have with our amazing guests. And if you haven't yet, watch us on our YouTube channel, too, where you can get to see us visually, not just listen to us in the audio. And share it. If you were enlightened or got anything out of this, share it with others because that will also help them as they grow and evolve as individuals and leaders. And until next time, stay safe and stay healthy.